Hello, my name is Canto. I'm very happy to be participating in this series of interviews. I'm a lecturer and consultant in sustainable tourism, but I'm specialized in community-based tourism. I've been working with community projects and local tourism networks in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and we've been working to strengthen, promote, and commercialize their initiatives in local and global markets. Currently, I am also collaborating with Como Travel to create an international network of consultants in community-based tourism. To answer that question, I want to tell you about my experience in the Uro Island in Peru. I booked a tour with a local travel agency, and during the visit, the guide was explaining that Urus build their own islands, that they have been living there for thousands of years, and that they still preserve their traditional lifestyles. Then he invited us to greet an indigenous group of women who were smiling and waving their hands towards us. I felt confused because I saw these women earlier on the station. They were coming down from large buses very early in the morning, wearing their typical clothing and running from one side to the station to the other. But once on the island, one could notice that none of these women were genuinely happy to see us. They were just trying to make a living by selling their handcrafts to tourists. This experience was significant for me because it changed the way I see and promote cultural tourism. It made me realize that not often during our trips do we take the time to reflect on the real lives of the people behind these tourism scenarios. Following the previous reflection, I think one of the main challenges of destination marketing is to find a way to show the uniqueness of the people that are currently living in their territories. For example, in the Yucatan Peninsula, Mayas are usually represented either with images of ancient warriors or portraits of very traditional women dressed in white shining dresses with colorful broderie and big bows and filigree jewelry, cooking tortillas inside of a traditional Mayan household. However, these images seem to ignore that there are also living Mayans who may use their typical clothes only for special occasions and may live in a modern version of a traditional house. But their daily lives are still deeply rooted to their land, to their animals, their bees, medicinal plants, traditional foods, and the stories of their grandparents. I believe it is fundamental for destinations to incorporate images of their living culture and to learn to retell the stories of their people. As Angela Imbuli said in a recent interview, there's so much diversity in being native. I work with many local groups that own cultural tourism projects in their communities. And first of all of them decided to work in tourism as a way to diversify their income. And this was especially important because sadly, due to climate change, environmental regulations, and land uncertainty, they could not live any longer only from their land. So they needed to find alternative sources of income to support their families. And tourism proved to be a good option. It helped them obtain an additional income to buy seeds and food for their animals, to send their children to school, to invest in other economic activities, and even to create businesses. And sometimes it even helped them to employ local people and buy local food supplies from the community. In addition, I believe cultural tourism makes visible this close relationship between indigenous livelihoods and their lands. So it is also considered a strategy to protect their territories and preserve their traditions. During COVID, we definitely noticed a growing interest in rural and cultural tourism, especially from international tour operators who were looking to integrate authentic experiences in communities to their traditional itineraries. Unfortunately, COVID crisis accentuated communities' limitations to access global markets. They have no internet, no sign, no computers, and difficulties to manage online reservation systems. However, attracting local markets remained as one of the main challenges. Even though local tourists were eager to try authentic immersive experiences, they didn't seem aware of structural challenges in communities, and they just wanted quick responses, plenty of flexibility, and cheap packages with almost no rules and no local guides to provide interpretation of the sites. It seemed that many of them wanted just enough to get a different experience, but not even close to learn about it. Again, I believe cultural tourism needs to find new ways to connect with local people, to educate them to be more responsible travelers, and to make alliances with governments to reduce the gap between communities and markets. Over-tourism has not yet been a major issue in the Yucatan Peninsula. However, when COVID restrictions were lifted in Quintana Roo, news about crowded beaches and streets in Cancun and Tulum started to invade social media. Surprisingly, if one dropped a couple kilometers further, there are many communities projects that were almost empty and struggling to attract visitors. Given this scenario, diversification and collaboration may be viable options to prevent over-tourism. Community projects in the region claim to obtain benefits when building fair trade alliances with tour operators, hotel chains, and transportation companies. And on the other hand, governments may use diversification as a strategy to increase returning visitors and provide more options to local markets. For example, in Yucatan, the Tourism Board recently launched a recovery campaign called 365 Days in Yucatan, which included 365 different activities and sites to visit in the state, from the popular archaeological sites like Chichen Itza to emerging cultural experiences in communities. And this was an effort that required to rediscover the destination, relaunch it, and support the creation of new cultural tourism products.